Welcome to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be removing the integrated trailer brake controller out of a 2008 F350. One thing I was getting here was a message, and it was coming pretty frequently. It kept saying camper or trailer disconnected, this message here. So I knew I had a problem. So I want to take a look at the brake control unit, because back at the connector, I was getting nothing when I manually activated it. I was getting nothing. Everything on this truck is stock, so we'll be starting with the coin holder. Just pops right out. Got two little clips. Just pop them out. It's easy. It has these two pegs here on the side. These two pegs go into these two loops here. Then once this is out, just reach behind the controller. Two fingers. I'm just going to pop it from the side. Just pull it out. That easy. Just not a whole lot holding it in. It's a wonder it doesn't fly out when you accelerate. Once you have the stealth module in. I'm just saying, stealth's that powerful. So we'll disconnect the connector. There we go. We got it propped up. So we'll push the little connector button there. Try to pull that out. But maybe we need to push it in further. So, okay, there we go. There it is, and that's the original brake controller, FOMO Co. And the reason I'm pulling this out is, word on the street is the solder jobs on this thing aren't necessarily the best. So I'm gonna try to pop it loose. Take a look at the solder connections. We'll let you know what happens later. All right, on to the solder job. All right, I got the module out and I put it on top of a container cover so I don't lose anything. There's a screw here. There's a screw there. There's a screw there. There's a screw there. We'll find out. There's one here. There's one here. And then there's one here and one here, and we're going to take this apart. This is a torque, those are torque screws, and that's a T7. So we're going to use a T7 to take these out. All right, I took every screw out. Do that, the cover comes right off. All right, show you what I got here. Looks like I got some power transistors right here, and I've got these clips that will, I'm assuming, keep these from shaking and maybe transmit some of the heat to the shell to act as a heat sink. I don't know. Anyway, there's 5 of them. Take those off. Then there's a screw here and a screw there. We'll take that off. We'll unplug the connector here. All right, to get this board off, I had to take this front piece loose. Not this side where the little nipple is sticking up, but over on this side, you got to push this black piece that's on the cover out a little bit, pop it loose, and then at the bottom, the middle clip goes into that hole right there. That arm reaches into that hole. You got to pull it out. Just lift it up, and then it'll come out, and then you just lift it straight up. And that's loose. Then to get the cable loose, I just pulled the arms on the outside outward and lifted this up, and the cable unplugged. So there we go. All right, I've reinstalled the module, nothing to it. Came out just as easy as it, or went in just as easy as it came out. I reflowed the solder on all those joints and reinstalled it, and I'm going to give it a test. So I've got my meter hooked to my connection. This is my 7-way here. I also have a 7-way for my 5th wheel as well. But we're connected here. So what I was just doing was activating this manually. And you saw the voltage react at the meter. Before I was getting nothing at the meter. So reflowing the solder did the trick. All right, I had a problem with the brake controller. I got that soldered, or the solder reflowed, got good connections. And that leads me to my camper wiring problem. So what I'm going to do is show in a very short time frame the easy way to troubleshoot or isolate your problem to a specific area. So let's just start by saying your camper has basically 5 components regarding your trailer brakes. And they are: 1, your truck; 2, the pigtail going to the pin box if you happen to have a 5th wheel; 3, your breakaway switch and its connection; 4, the wiring going through your camper; and 5, the connection to the brakes themselves. All right, so the first thing you got to do, you got to make sure that your connections are right. There's several different ways to hook up a 7-way based on your function. This is a camper. Its connections are specific. Make sure these connections are correct. Those connections are correct. I'll throw something up that shows you how it's supposed to be done. The first thing you want to do is, in my case, what I did was I measured my voltage on the brake connection at my truck. I had nothing. And then all of a sudden I got a little bit, and then I went back to nothing. That happened probably twice, 3 times. The connection was so erratic. So I knew my truck was a problem. I took my brake control unit out just because it has a bad reputation for solder joints, and I soldered it. And now I have good brake voltage here all the time. Connected my trailer. I get a wiring fault on trailer in my truck. So how do I isolate it? Where's it to? What's my problem? This is what I recommend. First step should be disconnecting these 2 wires. These are the wires coming to the trailer brakes. So I've isolated the camper from the trailer brakes. First step. Connect your meter to those 2 wires. Set it on voltage. Place it on the ground outside of the camper, out from underneath the camper, so that you can see it when you just walk over here and take a look. All right, this is true for my camper. It may not be true for your camper as far as color goes. I got a purple and white wire from my battery. It comes over here to the kingpin box. And when I say kingpin box, I mean this box right here. It's on the kingpin. So it goes to this normally closed breakaway switch, and then goes back into the connection with the blue wire. So with your meter connected to those 2 wires at your brakes, and these connections all still good, pull your breakaway switch pin. Yeah. Just give it a pull. Go back and look at your meter, and if you've got 12 volts back out on those 2 wires, what that is telling you is that, first off, your breakaway switch is functioning, and that your internal camper wiring is good. If it's good, if you got 12 volts back there at your meter, put the pin back in your breakaway switch. All right, so what's that leave us? That leaves us the fact that we tested the truck. It was bad. We fixed it. So that eliminates the truck as our problem, because we've checked it. It's good. We know it's good. We pulled the breakaway switch, having had 0 volts where we connected our meter. Pulled the breakaway switch. It sent 12 volts to the meter, that told us two things. Our breakaway switch and our camper internal wiring is good. But what could have happened is when we pulled that breakaway switch, we could have not gotten 12 volts. But that doesn't tell you which is the culprit here, the breakaway switch or the camper. So what you could have done at that point, you could do what I did. The blue wire connections is light blue on my camper, goes back to the trailer brakes, which is a normal color. This darker blue comes from my pigtail and connects to the truck. This is the pigtail. What I'm saying, that pigtail is the one that has the connector, is the pigtail. And then this black switch comes from the breakaway switch. So I have if you notice, the breakaway switch has two wires. One comes from the battery, and then one returns back up here and connects in with the blue wires. This is it. So what I could do is, with the breakaway switch still pulled, you could isolate these from each other, so which means you have to cut the wire nut off. These are metal crimp, so you had to cut it off. You could check the voltage right here, isolated from the two blue wires. If you have 12 volts here, your breakaway switch is good. If you have 12 volts here, but you didn't get 12 volts on your meter at the axle, then you have a problem with your internal wiring. So that's what could have happened. But let's say we pulled this right at the very beginning, got 12 volts of the axle. That tells us our breakaway switch is good and our internal wiring is good. So that means we have a good breakaway switch. That's not my issue. And we have good camper internal wiring. That's good. That's not my problem. So that leaves me with one or two things. My axle / brake wiring is no good, or my pigtail's no good. All right, so this is what I do. I can, with the pin pulled on my breakaway switch, I can measure 12 volts here. My meter, my probes, put it on breaking ground, pull the pin on the breakaway switch if it's not already. If I get 12 volts here, my pigtail is good. Then that would leave me with an axle brake problem. Now, in that short episode, you've isolated this down to where you know where the problem is. Now of course you got to find it in your axle wiring, but you're wiring for magnets. It's not that hard to find it. If you're using the type of connections where when you squeeze it, it cuts into the insulation and it's supposed to make a connection with the wire, personally, I don't like those, and I've had problems with them, and I had problems with those on this camper, and that was my wiring problem. So got rid of those. I used silicone filled waterproof lug nuts, and I completed my axle wiring. That was my problem. But this is a quick, easy way to isolate your brake issue down to one of these 5 components, because basically this is pretty much the same for all campers, at least up to unless there's something new out I don't know about. There you go. That's an easy way to troubleshoot, isolate down to a certain spot without getting crazy and having to do a bunch of stuff. You just broke 2 connections. You broke the connections at their one axle, and you broke the connection at your pin box. Not a big deal. So anyway, that's how I found my wiring problem. It was here, it was not here, and that's the way I did it. If you got a better idea, if this gives you a good idea, feel free to share. All right, guys, have a happy camping holiday weekend. See you on the road.